Welcome in. What is up, y'all? Welcome into the Sactown Sports Kings recap. My name is Chris Watkins, coming to you live from Golden One Center. Excuse if there's some, if the audio is not great. I was not fully prepared to go live today. Normally, I have my mic set up and everything. I'm a little naked out here, so please excuse the audio issues and bear with me. It will not be a long one today, as the Sacramento Kings fall to the Toronto Raptors by the score of 113-95. It's the Kings' lowest scoring output of the season, 95 points, and it was not pretty to watch. Yeah, you look at the numbers. Kings shoot 48% from the field tonight. It didn't feel like that at all. It was a very, very rough offensive night for the Sacramento Kings, and you had to kind of figure that was going to be Toronto's game plan. Toronto is by no stretch of the imagination an offensive juggernaut. They come in one of the worst offenses in the league. Their only hope at winning this game was to make the game pretty much like how they made it tonight, make it hard for Sacramento offensively to get going, and really make it a defensive battle. And tonight was honestly, it's good that the Kings see this kind of game go on now instead of later, because if you're Mike Brown and his coaching staff, this is kind of a nightmare game for your team. Not just because of the low point total, but what it also shows a huge crack in your armor where if your offense isn't going, what do you have to fall back on? And that's something that Mike Brown has challenged some of his players to address, individually. If you're not, it's been very popularized now how he challenged Keegan Murray to do more than just shoot. And what else can he bring? Well, this Kings team, if they're not shooting well, if they're not scoring, if their offense isn't there on a given night, if they're going to only score 95 points or close to that on a given night, can they win a game only scoring 105 points, which they didn't get to tonight? But my bigger point is, can they win a game when their offense isn't going? Can you win? We've seen them offensively blow teams out in a bunch of different ways. We've seen their offense be electric from the start, like it was the other night against Memphis. We've seen their offense come alive late, in some other games this year. We've seen both offense and defense come alive, like in that game at Cleveland earlier this year. But tonight was a night where the defense wasn't there. They gave up 113 points. It felt like Toronto can get to the rim whenever they want. They only shot 30% from three, which is surprising to me because it felt like they were knocking down shots all night. Their bench was huge for them, which is a big story on the opposite side for the Kings. Toronto's bench, mainly Precious Achiuwa and Chris Boucher, went crazy tonight. I think they combined for 35 points coming off the bench, which was just incredible for Toronto, especially when the Kings side only had, let's see here, quick math, 2 from Nezzy, 4 from Davion, 7 from Malik Monk. Oh, my math is getting bad here. 10, 12, 19, 23 points from the Kings bench. So, I mean, it was a big night for Toronto's bench, and, the Kings starters, they played all right. I think Kevin Huerter had himself a nice game. Keegan Murray continues to progressively put together positive performances. But, this was, frankly, you got to hold your stars accountable. This is back-to-back poor performances, in my opinion, from Domantas Sabonis. 2 games in a row here where he has had 8 turnovers in a game. On Monday, he still was able to pull out the triple-double. Tonight, wasn't even able to get a double-double, which has become routine for him at this point in the season. He's getting double-doubles at halftime. For him to only finish with, 9 points? 9 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists tonight. Domas didn't have it, and I didn't think he had it on Monday either. I think the stats weren't reflective of his true performance. It's all pretty much subjective because Domantas Sabonis, a bad game for Domas is a career night for most guys. So Domas having a bad game isn't going to look the same as Chimezie Metu having a bad game, but I definitely think that this has been a couple of rougher performances for Domas. I think this is a great point here. Street Thumper, fatigue playing a role. They were playing off the second night of a back-to-back the other day was that against Memphis or was that against Philadelphia? They have had a good amount of games, and for the entirety of the season, the Kings have kind of been a couple games behind the rest of the NBA in terms of their total games played. So the second half of the season, they had more games than any other team in the league. They have 2 or 3 games, I think, that they still need to make up on the rest of the league. So Kings are going to have to get used to that, being on a tighter schedule than most. They are a younger team, so you would suspect that fatigue shouldn't play that big of a role. But I think it's more fatigue management is the thing that I think is the bigger concern for this young team. It's not that these guys necessarily are going to be tired because they're younger guys. It's, do you know how to properly recover? I mean, that's a big part of being a pro is, when you're a young guy and you're in your first or second, third year in the league, yeah, you're young enough to where your body recovers and you can go out the next night and be fine. I was like, go out party or whatever, have a night the following night and then have a game the next day after and you'll be ready to go. But, if you ask a veteran like Harrison Barnes, who's, not necessarily, I think he's 29 years old. I'm sure Harrison Barnes is icing and getting in the hot tub and, he knows the proper recovery process. And I think that's the kind of thing that this team, especially now that they're in a situation where they need to be winning these games, it's not like in previous seasons for De'Aaron Fox where, oh yeah, around the 45, 50 game mark, you kind of know you're not going to be in the playoffs. And so, you might not take care of your body. You're not expecting to play, De'Aaron might be ready for 82 games, but if the Kings are going to make the playoffs and make some sort of a run, is De'Aaron ready for 90 games, 95 games, 100 games perhaps? I'll go out there. Does he have the fatigue? And not just De'Aaron, but everybody else. This is a very inexperienced team. So I think fatigue is a reason why they could be struggling now, but you hope that they can kind of, fatigue doesn't become an excuse for the entirety of the season. Hope this isn't a precursor of things to come. Absolutely. You definitely hope that tonight isn't the kind of night that they have a lot moving forward. I think it's really unfortunate that this comes after such an emotional high of that Grizzlies win, maybe the best performance that this team has had defensively of the year, and then to come out tonight and perform the way they did is a huge letdown, especially coming off the heels of Monty McNair getting a contract extension as well. It just kind of would have kept the good vibes going. I think, Kevy, that's a great point from Kevy D here. Lengthy defensive-minded players equals Kings kryptonite. That's super interesting. Not something I thought about. The Orlando Magic presented a similar problem, and we saw the Kings struggle with them the first time they played them in Orlando. I think the last time the Kings played Toronto as well, it was a big problem. And you saw Mike Brown, who might have been overthinking. I think this is the first time I've really questioned Mike Brown's rotation, but he decided in that first quarter after Trey Lyles had his best performance of the season against the Memphis Grizzlies for him to opt to bring in Chimezie Metu first off the bench with Davion Mitchell in that first quarter and not give Trey Lyles any minutes, I thought was interesting. I'm not quite sure I'm sure Mike Brown will be asked about that in his post-game press conference. I'm curious what he has to say about that, because I think after the game Trey Lyles had on Monday, I think he deserved every single minute that he would get in the next game. And so for him to not get the nod as the first one off the bench was really confusing to me. So curious. That is not the reason why the Kings lost this game at all, but that was definitely something I noticed early in this game, and something I have questions about for sure. This is definitely one of the more disappointing if not the most, probably emotionally the most deflating game of the season, I think, like I mentioned, just coming off of such the high of the Memphis game and then Monty's extension. Good vibes are in the air. It felt like, after the Kings beat Memphis, that this was a pretty winnable game tonight. And the Kings really just, it's tough to say they didn't show up because I think they kept it close for a lot of this game. And for, it was never really, I think I stated it like they weren't really ever in it, but also they were never really out of it. And they couldn't really make a decision and make the consistent stops. It stopped me if you've heard that before. We couldn't make consistent stops, and the offense just couldn't get into any sort of consistent rhythm. And that was really the story of tonight, is just not really much of any rhythm for the offensive side of the ball for the Kings tonight. I'm curious. I'm actually going to ask the chat here. That we don't have too many people in here, but I'm curious everyone's watching experience tonight. I saw that there was a lot of issues with NBC Sports and NBC Sports California. It seemed like after the first quarter, the issues got resolved, but I also saw that issues came back in like the third quarter, stuff like that. How was everybody's watching experience tonight? Did you have to go on the NBC app? Did you watch from your phone? Was everything good? Was it just a streaming issue and it was fine on cable TV? I know that they also had issues on Monday with they showed like some old dog show on NBC Sports California. Radio down right now. Really? I'm looking over at the radio broadcast side. Deuce does look like he's shoveling around a little bit, but I don't know if radio's down. Is that true? Radio down right now. Interesting. Kevy watched from the NBA app. That means you're out of market. Nice. I'm a big fan of the League Pass. League Pass app has definitely worked a lot better this year. In previous years, the League Pass app has been incredibly sketchy and just like not reliable and pretty hard to just navigate through. And I've been a big fan of what the NBA has improved with their app the past couple of years. Also cheaper this year. That's a great point. It is a lot cheaper this year. I think for all those who don't already have League Pass, I'm pretty sure not to be a salesman for NBA, but I believe that it's only $50 for the remainder of the season. So if you're a Kings fan and you're trying to, now would be a really good time to lock into the rest of the league, kind of scope out the competition, and you can see who the Kings might potentially match up with. So now is a perfect time to get NBA League Pass. And as I talk about League Pass and the rest of the league, let's take a look at the standings, see if the Sacramento Kings, they are still in third place. They actually have a pretty solid hold on that third place position. I don't think they've added in today's game, have they? Are we 27-19 nowadays? No, we are 27-20. So they have not added in this game, but the Kings are still in third place in the Western Conference. Can't believe that that's the case. The NBA trade deadline, ladies and gentlemen, is right around the corner. I could not believe it. Let me make sure I have the date right on that. The NBA trade deadline this year is Thursday, February 9th. We are at January 25th. So we are 2 weeks away from the trade deadline. Things will start cooking up. You'll probably start hearing a lot of whispers starting next week. In terms of what the Kings are going to do around the trade deadline, I think that there's a lot of mystery in the air. It doesn't seem like Harrison Barnes is on the table. He was probably the main figure that you would have guessed would have been moved at the deadline in the preseason and early in this year. But just with the way Harrison has played this past month and a half, I think he's kind of taken himself off of the trade block, and I would be at this point surprised if Harrison Barnes were to move. I think if Harrison moves, it's got to be for a pretty significant player in return. Just because if you're going to trade Harrison, I just think his off the floor value as well as on the floor, it would just be too big of a shakeup, I think, for them to do. So I would suspect maybe you could see Davion Mitchell be shipped off. I think that would probably be the biggest name that you see shipped off. I can't see a world where Keegan Murray is shipped off. Rashawn Holmes is somebody that's been talked about. I saw it was mentioned that he could potentially be a buyout candidate. I don't know about that. Terrence Davis is another King that might not be here post deadline. Excuse me. Felt that one coming. Felt that one coming about a mile away. So Terrence Davis, Davion Mitchell, Rashawn Holmes are absolutely names that I suspect to probably be the ones floated around the deadline. Trey Lyles doesn't make sense to be moved at this point. Chimezie Metu possibly could. I just don't know what his value really would be in a trade. So those would be the ones that I suspect. And, returning would probably be a backup big, potentially a backup wing. If Davion's moved, maybe you get a 2-player return and get a backup point guard in the trade as well on top of a bigger piece. But all that and more is right around the corner as the trade deadline, like I said, is 2 weeks away from tomorrow. So I'm actually really surprised that we have not heard more about the deadline being right around the corner. Lakers obviously made a big move on Monday, trading for Rui Hachimura. That kind of set off the trade season. That was an underwhelming trade in terms of the return that Washington got back. It was Kendrick Nunn and I believe 3 second-round picks. So, who knows? Who knows? I think value is going to be a big reason why a lot of moves don't happen this year. I think there's a lot of teams that are kind of clustered in the middle and aren't trying to make big swings or aren't trying to completely, shift their season. I don't think the Blazers are going to be trading, Jeremy Grant or anything like that. I would be surprised if they decide to make a tanking move, or even a team like Utah, who has Lauri Markkanen potentially on the trade block. Malik Beasley, some other impact guys. I think that there's going to be a lot of teams that like where they are in the standings and don't really want to make a big plummet and make big moves that could potentially tank their season. And obviously, I don't think good teams are going to be wanting to get rid of players that they feel like could impact their losing. Even if we want to look on the other side of the court tonight from the Kings, the Raptors are a team that a lot of people have talked about their trade potential. Will they move Pascal Siakam? I don't think so. I think that he's too high caliber of a player. Doesn't really make sense for them to move on from an all NBA guy. Like, that's the type of player that you're looking for in these kind of trades. So if Toronto, who I suspect has no intention of losing games anytime soon, wants to remain competitive, I don't think trading Pascal Siakam's the right move there. OG Anunoby is a name that's been linked heavily to Sacramento. I don't know if the Kings have the pieces for that. It sounds like Toronto's really keen on getting first-round picks, multiple first-round picks in return for OG. I can't imagine the Kings budge on that. I also don't think the Kings would want to get rid of Keegan Murray in that kind of deal, so I can't see how Monty McNair could make that work, especially with the GM as crafty and as cunning as Masai Ujiri. I can't see the Kings really getting a great deal away from Masai. Fred VanVleet, not really somebody the Kings are interested in, but somebody that you could see on the move. Also, Gary Trent Jr., somebody who really just kind of doesn't fit in with this roster. I could see those guys being moved, but very interesting. Like I said, with the deadline right around the corner, should be a lot of movers and shakers, and I don't suspect the Kings to be a big mover. I think, there's a lot of people clamoring for Mason Plumlee. I think that is a very solid option for the Kings to go. That, to me, feels like the biggest win for them. And for those who are wondering why Mason Plumlee, why everyone is so high on Mason Plumlee, it's that he is, he's not a diet version of Sabonis. He's like if Domas is Coca-Cola, he's diet right. It's like he's not the same thing, but he is similar. And I think for the role that you're asking him to do, I think he could do it in a limited role and it still makes sense. Like Mason, no one's going to be like, it's kind of crazy that Mason Plumlee's only playing 20 minutes for this team. He is a legitimate backup center, even though he's getting starter minutes right now. It's kind of like Rashawn Holmes, where it's like he's a starter quality guy But, he can also come off the bench and be a really good backup. But Plumlee is incredible at screen assists. He's a great passer in general. So I think that they could still kind of run the same system that they run with Domas, just with Mason Plumlee in the game as well. I don't think he's necessarily as perfect of a fit as everyone is kind of making him out to be, but definitely offensively, I think it makes sense with this, when you factor in the screening, when you factor in the playmaking, and the rebounding. Frankly, Mason Plumlee is one of the best rebounders in this league as well. And so that would be a welcome addition. But I think rim protection is a really, really big hole for this team. We saw tonight, I think the Raptors finish off with 58 points in the paint. 58 points in the paint, which is about average for the Sacramento Kings, but that is a very high number for NBA standards. So, I think just kind of rim protection in general, as well as screen setting and ball movement, ability to move the ball is definitely what they should value in a backup center. Let's see if there's anything else here. The Kings are about to go on a long 7-game road trip. Their next home game here is February 10th against the Dallas Mavericks. I think that will be Luka's first time back in town, back in Sacramento. I shouldn't say back in Sacramento, but Luka in Sacramento. There's only 3 home games in the entire month of February. Obviously, February is a short month. There's also the All-Star break as well, sandwiched in the middle of February. So we will not be live from Golden One Center very often for the foreseeable future. But Kings are about to go on a 7-game road trip. Let me read those games out right now. They play 2 games in Minnesota on Saturday the 28th and Monday the 30th. Then go to at San Antonio, at Indiana, at New Orleans, and then 2 games in Houston at the Rockets. Not the most difficult 7-game road trip with the Timberwolves, who are kind of starting to find their stride a little bit. But I believe Karl Anthony Towns is supposed to come back pretty soon. I don't think in time for the Kings to play them on Saturday and Monday. But, that's a T-Wolves team that is no joke. They have Anthony Edwards, who's an incredible talent. He's definitely going to do things against the Kings. If I'm not mistaken, Anthony Edwards had 41 points tonight. Let me make sure that's correct. Rudy Gobert obviously is in Minnesota as well. He's going to present some interesting problems for the Kings in the paint. Anthony Edwards had 37 points tonight, 37, 6, and 5 tonight. He's going to be a handful to deal with. They play the Spurs on the 1st of February. Not a bad thing, I guess. Pacers without Tyrese Halliburton. Not really too concerned about that. Should be fun to go against the New Orleans Pelicans, who are the current 4 seed in the Western Conference. That'll be their first time playing New Orleans, and New Orleans has been a great story this year. Should be interesting. The Kings 7 games over 500 now. I don't suspect them to creep that close to 500 anytime soon this season. So I don't think we really need to keep mentioning how many games to 500 they are. I think that's going to end it tonight. I'm surprised I even was able to go 23 minutes after, in my opinion, the most disappointing game of the year. Here in Sacramento. Again, the Kings fall to the Toronto Raptors by a score of 113-95. Top performer for the Toronto Raptors was Pascal Siakam, who almost had himself a triple-double, 26 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists for the All-NBA power forward. For Toronto. Kings player of the game, Kevin Huerter, 21 points. Keegan Murray, I thought, had another good showing, 16 points, 4 assists, 3 rebounds for Keegan. If I had to give, a player of the game for today, just overall, not even Sacramento specific, it's tough to not give it to Pascal for his numbers. I don't really remember too much of Pascal in terms of impact. To me, the biggest impact was honestly the Raptors bench. I think Precious Achiuwa and Chris Boucher made the biggest impact, and without their big scoring nights, I don't know if Toronto wins tonight because they were really just unstoppable. The Kings really couldn't do much of anything to slow them down. Let me see here. They finished for a combined 35 points, 16 of 23 from the field. I am not good at math, so I can't tell you that percentage, but I can tell you that is very good if your bench is dropping 35 points and 16 of 23 from the field. So, yeah, I'll give it to the Raptors bench. We will not have another Kings game until Saturday, ladies and gentlemen. Please stay safe out there. There will be no beam tonight. Hopefully we can get one on Saturday and then again on Monday against the against the Minnesota Timberwolves. You can check out all that action on Sactown Sports 1140. Check me out. Actually, on Friday, me and Frankie Cardicelli will be hopping on Deuce and Mo, I believe, at the 1 o'clock hour from 1 to 2. So really excited for that. Please sure to check in with that. Also on Saturday from 11 to noon, I have my show, Kings Weekly, with Chris Watkins. Please be sure to tune into that. That is right here on Sactown Sports 1140 YouTube channel, on Sactown Sports 1140 Twitter page, and on Sactown Sports 1140 a.m. traditional radio. Thank you all for tuning in. Hope you all have a good and safe night. They didn't play well, but go Kings.